Morning, everyone, and wow, welcome to the Monday, January 23rd edition of the OBX Wave Reports. And wow, boy, did we have some crazy weather yesterday here on the Outer Banks. I've been looking at the national media, and none of it has picked this up, but we had a very, very powerful gust front come through from the south yesterday afternoon at around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and it kicked up some extraordinarily powerful winds for the kind of weather system that was coming through. Not like from the forecasts and the models, didn't look like it was going to be anywhere near what we saw. We had very strong winds across Nag's Head and Manio here and up and down the Outer Banks, reports of power outages and just, general impacts. I was driving across the causeway from Nag's Head to Manio and saw bits and pieces of debris, like siding blowing across the road as really strong winds were cutting across the causeway. And this is a picture that my wife Cat got of the sound looking south into the teeth of this gust front, and you can see the white caps. Although the picture does not convey the full fury of the moment. At the time, of course, I didn't have an anemometer or any way of measuring the wind speed, but looking back, we do have a observation station at Jeanette's Pier that provides a history of wind gusts. And at 5:10 p.m., lo and behold, we had a wind gust at Jeanette's Pier of 75 miles per hour coming out of the southeast. So hurricane force wind gusts yesterday at Jeanette's Pier and likely across the Nag's Head region. Winds out here in Manio were probably a bit calmer as you have buildings and trees breaking up the wind speed coming in off the ocean. But wow, what a crazy event yesterday. Totally unexpected. We did have gale watches and warnings posted up for some of the regions to the south of us, but there was, at least according to the report I did earlier in the day, no indication of gale or strong gale, much less storm force gusts coming in off the Atlantic in association with a front sweeping through. And I'm going to go ahead and show you the graphic here provided by Wind Alert in association with Jeanette's Pier observations. And here you have the model of recorded wind speeds with that really high gust at 75 miles per hour. I'm going to go ahead and highlight that at 5:10 p.m. yesterday. So a hurricane force gust coming out of the southeast, maybe south southeast. Those winds were just really kicking up. I did get some video of some of the winds starting to come in as it looked like there might be a gale imminent later on in the afternoon, but this was before the winds really kicked up. It was more like in the 3 o'clock time frame as we were getting 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts coming in off the southeast. And then just later on in the day, we just got this big blow with just, I don't know, crazy hurricane force wind speeds coming in out of the southeast. No major storm, no bomb cyclone out there as far as pressures go, but clearly some kind of crazy gradient going on between the warm and the cold air, and in association with a front sweeping in from the south and west across the Outer Banks yesterday. So yeah, just here to report that for weather watchers and wave watchers here. Right now on the Outer Banks, we do have some much better surf, as you would expect, with those gale force winds coming in and stronger yesterday, kicking up a bit of a swell. And we've basically got, looks like 3 to 8 foot waves across the Outer Banks, depending on your location. The swells coming in may or may not be all translating to the coastline because right now we have strong westerly winds coming in out of the west southwest. But with relatively tall swells and strong westerly winds following a big blow yesterday. According to the wave monitors, we've got some really hollow barrels from S turns southward down to Buxton and possibly down for some of the south facing beaches, but more for the eastern and southeastern facing beaches with those strong westerly winds coming in. And so for today, no hurricane force winds, but westerlies coming in the 20 to 30 mile an hour range, hollowing out those tall swells that were kicked up yesterday. And so if you get out to the surf today, you might have the opportunity to ride some pretty sick barrels all up and down from S turns down south to Buxton. And I'm going to talk about some locational information, and we're going to try and get down to the coastline today and get some video of the waves. We'll see if we can get you some good observations before the waves get blown out with those strong winds. All right, so in any case, looking at the geocolor satellite composite provided by NOAA, we do see that the frontal system is sweeping on off to the east. I'll go ahead and update this because this might be a little bit older. Yeah, it looks like it was mostly recent. So the front is sweeping on off to the east, the one that brought so much strong wind yesterday. We also had some pretty heavy rain. It was pretty intense. I mean, it reminded me of some of the tropical cyclones that I've experienced in the past. Not weather for the faint of heart for sure. As far as the ocean goes, um, waves got big. They did get kicked up, but it wasn't crazy massive. Probably in the range of 8 to 10 feet at the peak of the system, likely due to the short duration of the event. But in any case, still, nonetheless, big waves, heavy rain, and hurricane force wind gusts, no joke. And in association with just a front and I don't know, maybe a 995 millibar low. Um, but those wind speeds, man, really nothing to shake a stick at. All right, so the front is offshore now. We've got some disturbed weather up to the northeast again, so more snows for the northeast. We've got another impulse of disturbed weather gathering down here near the Gulf in the southern region of Texas and into Mexico here. And we've got another impulse moving in across the central US and sweeping down through parts of the Rockies. California remains clear, which is a bit of a break. The models are indicating more rainy conditions for California over the next 7 days, but nothing crazy, no real heavy rainfall indicated. Um, and we'll talk about that. We'll look at the NOAA QPF here in a second and just talk about the general trends predicted over the next 7 days for storms. Looking at the infrared satellite shot provided by Tropical Tidbits, you can see the high cold cloud tops associated with the front that came through yesterday, kicking up those strong winds and causing all the unexpected mayhem here in the Outer Banks. You've got that impulse sweeping down through parts of the Rockies and in the northern tier of the US. You have some weather curling in from the Pacific across parts of Washington and an area of clouds developing in the Gulf Coast region of Texas and Mexico, not really firing off to any major storms at present, but you do see that Gulf moisture flow, so that's something to keep an eye on. It is worth noting we've got a bit of a teleconnection coming in here from the Pacific as well, with some storms firing in the tropics, with actually a rather large area of stormy weather here in the tropics in the eastern Pacific, and moisture flowing up from the tropics across Mexico into the Gulf of Mexico and into the Atlantic off the eastern seaboard. It is worth noting that the ocean water temperatures both in the Gulf and off the eastern seaboard are much warmer than normal, with warmer than normal temperatures here southwest of California and the Baja region of Mexico. So overall, warmer than normal ocean water conditions lending to feeding the moisture into this um, synoptic pattern of moisture flow into the Gulf and into the U.S. Southeast. And The models are pointing towards stormier conditions for the US East. So, and this is one of the main ingredients. The other ingredient is these impulses sweeping down from the north in the Arctic, and the clash between the warm, moist air to the south with that extra heat over the ocean and the Arctic air to the north is what's fueling the severe weather conditions that we have experienced here in the Outer Banks, and as far as strong snowfalls right now being experienced in the US Northeast. Oh, okay. Let's look at the National Weather Service picture for radar and alerts. And I just want to zoom out and show you all the alerts that we're seeing for the US East right now. Off the US East Coast, off the Outer Banks here, we've got gale warnings for areas south of Oregon Inlet and moving on down to Morehead City. That's been the case now for I think about 3 days running. So in the near offshore environment, it's been pretty stormy. Out here in the Northeast, you got snow alerts of all types, just lighting up like a Christmas tree here. I'm just going to zoom in so you guys can see this. So you got these winter weather advisories out in uh, parts of the Northeast. Looks like Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, parts of New York. Let's just go ahead and pick one. Town of Chester, New Hampshire, presently experiencing a winter storm warning. We've got winter storm warnings up for Holden, Massachusetts, and on into parts of New York. The town of Hamden, New York, also under a winter storm warning. So big winter storm event out here for the U.S. Northeast. So yeah, lots of alerts. We got looks like we got some flood advisories here for New Jersey. I'm just gonna take a look at that for a second. Oh, coastal flood advisory. Wow. Yeah, so the storm that did rake the Outer Banks with hurricane force gusts yesterday apparently is kicking up some serious surf and maybe a bit of a storm surge here or rising high tide, higher than normal high tides out here for New Jersey and out here in Massachusetts as well. Let's see, in Centerville, Massachusetts, coastal flood advisory as well. So storm system has not lost any of its teeth as it moves on north, and it had some serious fangs down here in the Outer Banks. Okay, so looking at NOAA QPF, the quantitative prediction forecast for the next 7 days does give us an indication of where the stormy weather will tend to be and how much storminess as far as rainfall and precipitation we can tend to expect over the next 7 days. Of course, this is a very granular model and it is subject to change as forecasts change. These longer range forecasts give us a good guide, but they don't always zero in on exact specificity. But overall, you can see that the US East is under the gun for more stormy conditions here in the Outer Banks as well over the next 7 days, as storm systems are expected to develop here in the Gulf and impulses are expected to sweep down from the Arctic, and the confluence of the two, the clash between hot and cold and warmer and moister than normal air over the Atlantic and the Gulf between the Arctic cold does provide a lot of potential for severe weather. And I have heard talk of potential for strong thunderstorms coming up by Tuesday, particularly in the US Southeast. So we might have another tornado event. We'll have to see. I don't know. I might look at some of the mesoscale models and provide you guys with a little bit of an assessment for what the mesoscale models are saying. But yeah, in any case, everyone, please stay safe and listen to your local weather officials for alerts and pay attention to your local emergency management folk as well. All right, looking out west, we do still have a trend for less severe weather type events for the US West Coast. It is worth noting, though, that California does appear to get some precipitation in the 7-day quantitative prediction models. The peak precipitation totals for some of the mountain regions likely in the form of snow in the range of about looks like maybe a half an inch or so. Nothing really to write home about as far as severe weather potentials go, but it is trending a little bit more toward the rainy side for California as opposed to the bone dry side. We do have precipitation in the models. It's nothing really intense, though, expected, at least as far as the NOAA QPF model goes for the long range. And that is good news for California, which is reeling after a series of very strong events. Okay, so that's a picture of the larger weather and climate situation for the US, for the lower 48. Let's get back to our waves because, yeah, we're here to talk waves. And let's get down to Jeanette's Pier and talk about some local conditions. And right now at Jeanette's Pier, the waves are coming in the range of 3 to 4 feet. Some of that, I'm looking kind of at a hybrid swell slash wave model, trying to get a more accurate picture of the waves. And the swell coming in, the maximum range is around 4 to 4.5 feet. So 3 to 4 feet down there at Jeanette's Pier, with a 9-second primary swell and an 8-second secondary swell. Winds are coming out of the west-southwest at 18 miles per hour, which is offshore. Air temperatures are 49 degrees Fahrenheit. Ocean water temperatures tamping up a bit. It's interesting how the ocean water temperatures are swinging. We had some northerly winds, and it really kicked in those colder waters from the Labrador current, or that last little strand of the Labrador current. And so ocean water temperatures at Jeanette's Pier yesterday and the day before were in the range of 49 degrees Fahrenheit. And now, since we've had that southerly flow and that southeasterly flow, we're getting more of a Gulf Stream influence, and water temperatures are about 3 degrees warmer. So we get a pretty big swing here in the wintertime, or at least we are right now. And you can really see that boundary. It's something else. It's interesting. Well, in any case, so a little bit warmer than waters than yesterday, but still cold. So make sure you have your cold weather gear available, your wetsuits, your hoods, your booties, your gloves, because you're going to need them out there. Weather conditions for today are clearing, breezy with winds out of the west-southwest, and the expected high today at Jeanette's Pier at 56 degrees. Moving on south past Oregon Inlet, we're going to go down to those big barrels that I was talking to you about. And one of the big barrel places just generally for the Outer Banks is S-turns. S-turns, the waves there can tend to throw even more than the typical Outer Banks waves. Outer Banks waves do tend to be pretty hollow, particularly in wintertime, as you get a lot of force for those swells just coming in off the North Atlantic, and those axe edges of those lips really just get thrown out as they come in and they encounter the sandbar. It's something that's pretty unique for the U.S. East Coast, these hollow Outer Banks waves that are pretty famous for us locals here and us East Coasters. And at S-turns today, likely seeing some serious barrels with waves right now in the range of 3 to 4 feet, and the primary swell coming in at 9 seconds with a secondary swell coming in at 8 seconds. Winds are raging out of the west-northwest at 27 miles per hour offshore. You're probably getting a lot of spray flying off those waves as they roll in from the North Atlantic. Air temperatures right now in the range of 56 degrees Fahrenheit. Ocean water temperatures a bit warmer, as you would expect as you head on down the coast, at 54 degrees. Conditions for the weather are clearing, breezy, and expected high today of 58 degrees at S-turns. And as we head on down the Hatteras Island Strand to Rodanthe, Waves, Salvo, Avon, all of these beach locations are likely experiencing similar surf in the range of 2 to 4 and 3 to 4 feet with very hollow waves. So all these locations are likely getting these big barrels right about now. But I'm going to go ahead and give you guys another observation down here at Buxton, which is the big wave spot for today, arguably. And Buxton right now is experiencing 4 to 6 foot surf. I put a little asterisk by that 6 because the swell indicator for the near shore waters, and that's very close to shore, is around 8 feet. The swell is coming in almost at a due cross shore angle, which might be tamping down some of those wave heights as they form up. But nonetheless, I did want to tell you how big the swell is. It's big, big swell. and and with those westerlies coming in and with the angle of the waves just kind of pushing in like this, you're going to get some hollow waves and some big right turns there. And so yeah, Buxton might be pretty fun and crazy today with those large waves. Of course, the waves will be falling down throughout the day as those winds blow in from the west. So you might want to get out there and enjoy the waves while you can. Swell coming in at an 8-second period there from the south and east. The winds coming in at 29 miles per hour offshore, so almost into the near gale force range out of the west-southwest. Temperatures right now at Buxton in the range of 57 degrees. Ocean water temperature 59 degrees. With those temperatures in the 50s, you're going to definitely still want your cold weather protection. And right now it is, as far as weather conditions, the weather is clearing, windy, and an expected high at Buxton today of 63 degrees Fahrenheit. I did throw in another location for our observational reports today, and we're going to go on down to Frisco because we do have those strong west-southwesterly winds that's coming in cross shore here at Frisco. Probably pretty choppy, actually, given the cross shore flow and the strong winds at 29 miles per hour. Waves right now, according to the models, are 4 to 6 feet with a 7.5 foot swell in the near shore, so maybe 4 to 7 foot. Primary period of that swell coming in at 8 seconds. Winds again out of the west southwest at 29 miles per hour, which is cross shore here, likely chopping up those waves. And the air temperature right now, 57 degrees Fahrenheit. Ocean water temperature is a tick higher than Buxton at 60 degrees. The only 60-degree location that I've seen so far today, although I don't know, you might get warmer waters in Ocracoke, but with Ocracoke further west, I would say that that's less likely. The Gulf Stream is closer here to Hatteras Village and Frisco, so probably the warmest water spot down there at Frisco. As with all the other locations today across the Outer Banks, we have clearing, breezy conditions, and for Frisco, the expected high temperature today is 63 degrees Fahrenheit. Warmer today, windy, following hurricane force gusts yesterday, and big hollow barrels that surfers can enjoy if they're willing to get out in their wetties and maybe get a little spray in the face and charge some likely pretty steep drop-ins. Um, Sounds like a fun, almost epic day here at the Outer Banks for our winter surfing conditions. All right, let's get on back to our weather and climate discussion. And right now, looking at the high and low pressure systems, the high pressure systems coming in the white, the low pressure systems coming in the purple, and getting into the red kind of pink range here. We do have that strong storm system. Well, it's a 994 millibar system, so like pressure-wise, not so strong, but I mean, this one packs a punch. It seems to pack a punch above what the pressure would seem to indicate. So I'm just going to call it a strong storm system because right now it's causing all sorts of winter weather havoc for the Northeast and some coastal flood advisories as well. So we've got this relatively strong storm system in the east. We've got an impulse in the west near the Rockies and Texas and Mexico that's starting to gather some steam. This one being the weather event that's likely to bring severe weather to the U.S. Southeast by Tuesday. We've got the blocking high off the U.S. West Coast that is warding storm systems off to the north and east toward Alaska and Canada here, and providing for that respite of storms for California. And we've got another blocking high here off of Europe that is directing storms off over Greenland and Baffin Bay toward Iceland, and this big nasty storm out here next to Svalbard in the 963 millibar range, which is kicking up some serious significant wave heights just south of Svalbard. Looking at the model forecast for the coming days, we do see a tendency for storms to continue to form for the U.S. East. and a tendency for storms to get warded away from the US West, even as strong storms roar off into the North Atlantic toward Greenland, Iceland, Baffin Bay, and into the near Arctic here. And I'm just going to go ahead and run this model so you guys can see. Actually, let's pause this. I'm going to slow it down. Let's see, can we slow it down? Maybe I'll just do it frame by frame because they tend to move pretty quick. Okay, so here is the storm system forming over Texas by Tuesday that's expected to start to bring in some severe weather. And then by later in the day on Tuesday, severe weather predicted for Texas, and then moving on into Louisiana as we get into early Wednesday, and then into the Mississippi River Valley, shifting into the Appalachian region, Alabama, parts of Kentucky, Tennessee, and wintry weather for parts of Ohio and the upper Mississippi River Valley region, as well as the northern Ohio River Valley. Blocking high continues toward the west coast as this most recent storm system marches in. And then by Thursday, we're expected to see some severe weather here on the coast with likely severe weather for the Outer Banks as well, with another strong front sweeping in and another snowstorm for the U.S. Northeast and Great Lakes region, parts of the Great Lakes. And then moving on into later in the day on Thursday, it looks like we've got some pretty severe weather predicted for the Outer Banks here. So we'll have to keep a weather eye to that. If it's anything like what just swept through, it could be another intense event here for the Outer Banks. Um, and then the storm lingers over the Northeast until later on Thursday and then starts to sweep up toward Canada on Friday, heading off into Baffin Bay, where it looks like it starts to really intensify, and then heading slowly up Baffin Bay. All right, and then another storm system developing out west, dipping down into the US East. And so, yeah, it looks like we've got this progression of storms for the US East. So very stormy late January and into early February for the US East Coast and parts of the US East, while the West tends to be less stormy. But as we get later into the models, it does look like the blocking high starts to sag and we start to get some strong storms coming off the Pacific again toward Washington, Oregon, and Northern California later on in the model. Although the blocking high does appear to try and reassert, so maybe some more intermittency as far as weather goes out for the US West Coast. And that's a general assessment of the models. Wow, we got a 959 millibar storm, looks like 959, 954 millibar storm at the tail end of the model here just south of Greenland. We'll have to keep an eye on that, see how conditions form up. All right, as we get to the tail end of our OBX wave report for today, we are going to provide you guys with a general summary of wave conditions. We're going to start out with the Outer Banks and look at present wave conditions in the near offshore environment with a swell of 8 to 9 feet off the southern beaches and the swell of 6 to 7 feet off the maybe more like, yeah, in the range of 5 to 7 feet off the east and northeast facing beaches, with that trailing influence of the large storm or the powerful storm that swept through yesterday. I'm still trying to figure out whether or not, I mean, as far as millibars go, it wasn't really a powerful storm, but as far as impacts go, it was pretty powerful. And a lot of these impacts really weren't reported, at least for the Outer Banks in the national media, which is understandable. We're not like big population spot, although a huge number of people do come down here to visit, even in the wintertime. Looks like I lost audio there for a second. I'm going to do an audio check. Check, check, check. Okay. Yeah. So we do still have some large swells. These swells will tamp down through today, tomorrow, and expected to shift around to the north and get down into the range of 3 to 4 feet, although not too small. And then as we get into Wednesday, Swells, we get a southerly flow again, starting to kick up swells from the south in the range of 4 to 5 feet. And for the east facing beaches, the swells drop down to 1 to 2 foot. And then as we get into, let's see, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I had a bit of a brain there. We get waves coming in, or winds coming in from the south, kicking up the swell again into the range of 8 to 9 feet for the south facing beaches, and then for the north facing beaches in the range of 6 to 8 feet. So, yeah, another big swell event kicking in on Thursday. And let's see, then sweeping off on Friday with the remaining swell, the remnant swell after the Friday event ranging from 3 to 4 feet south and looks like 2 to 3 feet north. All right, so let's look at some of our wave hotspots around the North Atlantic and the Eastern Pacific here. Right now, waves for the North Atlantic are still pretty disturbed. We've got 5 to 6 foot swells for Portugal. We've got 7 to 9 foot swells out here off of Ireland. I've seen quite a lot of surfing out in these regions, but the main event out here is in like the Arctic, and I'm pretty sure no one's surfing it. I don't know, maybe someone's surfing it, but right now we've got significant wave heights in the 30-foot range south of Svalbard, and near the ice sheets or the sea ice, we've got 15-foot significant wave heights just to the west of Svalbard, and 7-foot significant wave heights over on the Siberia side as well. And this storm system is expected to sweep up toward Siberia, kicking up the waves toward the Siberian Arctic side into the 11-foot range. And that's interesting to me. The waves tearing into the edge of the sea ice there is something that can, over time, depending on the strength of the storm, have a real effect on sea ice. Although with this particular event, doesn't really seem likely. We would need to talk to Zach Labe about that, or our other Arctic experts. Nonetheless, we do have some observations of some large waves near the ice, which is something that we do want to monitor. And we also have another very large storm out here in the central Pacific, south of the Aleutians, with 36-foot significant wave heights. Closer to the coastline, off of California, we've got wave heights in the range of significant wave heights off in the near offshore environment in the range of 9 to 10 feet for central and northern California. As we get more into the south, we've got significant wave heights in the range of 2 to 7 feet, with 5 feet in the near offshore environment for many of the beaches down there in Southern California. All right, so thank you for joining me for the OBX wave report for January the 23rd, following a day of hurricane force gusts down here at Jeanette's Pier. A pretty intense event, but for today we have beautiful clearing skies and just watching the sunbeams stream down. And out there on the beaches, we got some big barrels. So have fun, go charge the surf and enjoy. And for those of you who do watch, please do remember to do everything you can to help accelerate the transition to clean energy, which will help to protect our beautiful coastlines from the impacts of human-caused climate change. It will help to reduce the pollution in our environment and help set in place the processes which will enable sustainability and moving away from both the emissions that are harmful to so much of our wildlife and our environment, but also move away from harmful materials like petroleum-based plastics that do not degrade in the environment and cause so much trouble. They carry these harmful chemicals that cause all this trouble. Wildlife ends up swallowing it or eating it and choking on it, or filling up their stomach with it. Microplastics can end up in your bloodstream. It's just not good. But it is worth noting that plastic right now, in large part, is a petroleum-based product that is an upshot of the fossil fuel burning. And it's kind of a byproduct of the whole process of fossil fuel burning. And it's also worth noting that The plastic stuffs produced by petroleum over time do also leach carbon into the atmosphere, so they contribute to the problem of climate crisis, which is heating up the environment and causing the sea levels to rise and providing that extra heat intensity, like a heat engine intensity, for the formation of powerful storms that threaten our coastlines. So it's kind of all linked. I had a reporter some weeks back interview me on plastic, and there's like this big focus on plastic. And don't get me wrong, we need to focus on plastic too, but the center of gravity really does reside more with the whole fossil fuel extraction and burning process, which as a byproduct produces all of these harmful petrochemical plastics. And if we transition to clean energy, there's less of a base for that. And we start to build in place a reduced dependence on this harmful energy source that also produces harmful products and materials. And we begin to start to look for other materials that can replace the petrochemical plastics as well. So it's kind of a synergistic system. It aligns and comes into balance, much as like a surfer learning how to surf. So yeah, there's my metaphor for a sustainable future and a better world, and for protecting our coastlines from the impacts of climate change. So thank you for joining me, and I will be back with you shortly, hopefully